Hey folks, BrickSidious here, back with another Bricks and Minifigs Reckless Ben saga commentary. I have been waiting, and as probably many of you have, for coffeezilla to release his analysis of the situation. For those who are not familiar, coffeezilla is a real treasure on YouTube, a well-respected, millions of subscribers channel about investigating fraud and scams, mostly relevant to the online community, like crypto, FTX type stuff. Logan Paul with his NFT animal zoo thing type scandal, stuff like that. And I don't know if he's been following this, but of course a lot of his fans and the community had urged him to take a look and get into it, and I'm glad that he has. He spent a lot of his team's resources doing kind of like forensic accounting and looking to try to find. You see the video title here is like, I found the missing Lego supply. So he kind of is making an effort to, properly price the full inventory of Brian's consignment collection, and then figure out where it all went over time. So he's not even getting into like the American Force Police Department corruption and the problems there with, how Ben was treated and how they've been protecting BAM people that they know from the church or whatnot. So he's not even getting into that. So we'll just focus on here. He interviews Crystal and her husband. I forget his name. He interviews the McNeffs brothers who are CEO and COO of BAM. So they're not only officers, but apparently they're majority owners of the company as well. It's a private company. So no one's firing them, apparently. And then lastly, I think he texts a little bit with Josh and Brandon, the new franchisees who took over after Crystal. And he talks to Reckless Ben a little bit as well. But now, like, you've probably heard that Reckless Ben has some sort of restraining order against him, delivered by like a Utah court, saying that if he talks about this case anymore, he will lose his lawsuits and be financially liable for a lot of money that put him and his friends and maybe Brian also in jeopardy. So that's why he's gone silent. It's really sad that that the court has decided this way to silence him. I don't see how that proves any innocence on the BAM side. Of course, I guess maybe their argument is they're going to prevent Ben from doing further damage to them, which I don't know how that's possible right now. And they're doing plenty of damage to themselves. But it sounds like a judge had Ben, or a judge was convinced that Ben is a physical threat to them. Like, I don't know what evidence he had that they were, of course, BAM had tried to insinuate that Ben was threatening violence, bomb threat, etc. to staff and facilities owned by BAM. I mean, you can tell, look at the guy's personality and his track record. He's not like that, but I guess a judge was cool with it. And the part that's really disgusting to me is, they're claiming that the GoFundMe or Patreon or whatever that have been raising money from the community to support Brian and Ben are like ill-gotten gains, because they got, basically people were motivated to donate because of lies that Ben and Brian had spread about BAM, and so therefore BAM should take possession of that funding, which is ludicrous. I don't know how the law works that way, but like, if I guess they can ask for whatever damages, but ultimately a court or jury would decide. However, it just seems on principle wrong that, like, hey, so these two parties are having a squabble, and one party is asking to raise money, and I tend to like that party's position and where they're coming from, so I want to donate to them. And even if it turns out that party was lying about their opponents, that doesn't mean I'm okay to give that money to the opponent. Which it's my money, it's my choice. I could ask for a refund, and then maybe I could redonate to that other party if I'm so persuaded. But you can't just take my money from one side to the other. I don't know if that's how the legal system works, but anyway. So anyway, I'm showing you footage of Coffee's video here. But first, before that, let me make a plug for this other one. This channel called Sadie, the Prime Minister of Behavior. I've never heard of her before, but she's some sort of like body language expert, or maybe psychologist, whatnot. So she did a video, 30 minutes, quite extensive, about looking at the Ammon McNeff podcast interview. Maybe there were two videos, actually, I don't remember, but basically analyzing his body language, his word choices, etc., how he responds in different situations. And this was the interview with Fox, actually. So and she kind of shows how sus Ammon's performance in that interview was. So definitely recommend that. But going back to Coffee now, let me go back to this section, which is hilarious. Is like, this is just a microcosm of the whole of the hole they're digging themselves. Is like, it seemed very suspicious that when Brandon, going over to Crystal's store with his backwards white hat and everything, saying like, the store's under my management now. You don't have to worry about anything. We'll take care of and Crystal's like, well, there's this consignment agreement and blah blah blah. It's like, oh, don't worry about that. We'll handle it from here on out. And he comes with a U-Haul, right? So, first Ammon denied that he came in a U-Haul. He's like, oh, no, he came in a rental car. And then when Coffee shows security footage from Crystal about a U-Haul in the parking lot, and it's like, oh yeah, just by coincidence, is it there in the middle of the night? Then Ammon's like scrambling and, you see, he comes up with like a 10-minute explanation, which is total, like, even if it was true, it's so bizarre, and how he messaged it is so bad that it wouldn't convince anybody. But overall, like, some people were complaining that like, oh, Coffee's late to the party here. This has already been settled. Like, what more info could be revealed? I think, I've been following this case pretty carefully. A lot has been revealed here. I'm very impressed, actually. And let me go into it. So first of all, one is, it's still unclear whether Brandon and Josh are like corporate employees of BAM or not. I mean, ultimately it doesn't matter really. But one thing that's notable is they are the owners of the Eugene, Oregon BAM. So nearby Eugene and Salem, I want to say they're maybe a couple hours drive apart. I'm not sure, but they're within the same state and the west side of Oregon. So, well, very few people live in the eastern Oregon. Anyway, so that is like really suspicious there to begin with. But maybe you're thinking like, Brandon and Josh know the local market. They'd be good franchise owners for this store too. Yeah, maybe so. But the whole like, it sounded like, the great thing too is Coffee had a former employee from the Eugene store give a voice, like they scrubbed his voice, and he gave like an anonymous interview on the phone explaining some really shady things about Brandon and Josh there, and that maybe the Eugene store wasn't doing so great. And all of a sudden, they show up with a U-Haul full of Lego Star Wars, potentially from this Crystal Salem store. So it looks really weird. Another crazy thing is, so this I partly blame Crystal for, and Brian as well, is that there was a whole bunch of more complexity with the consignment deal and the situation. So one, like the Lego collection, the 200K number, like Crystal just came up with that number after visually inspecting the 3 rooms of Lego that she saw at the Mansell's home. So it's not scientific at all. And of course, we know it's probably an overestimate. And BAM was using that number as like a marketing to draw people in and say, oh, look at this giant Lego Star Wars collection that could be yours. But doing a more scientific accounting of things, it's looking like the total value was more like 100K. And again, that I'm not sure, are they using Bricklink average selling price or Brick Economy? What is the value of a collectible? An out of stock retired collectible? It's in the eyes of the beholder, right? And even that, if Brick Economy says a set is like worth $5,000, maybe you'd probably have a difficulty finding a buyer who will pay that much, unless they're like a Saudi royal or something. Maybe a actual collector like myself. Okay, I'll offer 3,000 cash, and the seller would take it. So these numbers, take what you will, but we know that the collection is the true value, if it were to be sold today fairly, would be in the tens of thousands and likely over 50,000. That's I guess what I can comfortably assume right now. But anyway, so we in the past, like, I'm not sure how much of this content you've been following, but I was led to believe that the Mansell said, here's my entire collection, let's put it on consignment at Crystal's Salem store, and she is the exclusive seller. That wasn't the case. So apparently there was a side deal with M&R Productions, the guy with brown hair from Florida, and that he was going to buy some thousands of those sets too. Which one? Okay, I've watched M&R's channel, his last few videos about this. He didn't say anything about that. That's kind of messed up. Brian didn't say anything about that. Just put it out there. Like transparency can only help you unless you're trying to do something shady. So again, like in my old video, I said like everybody messed up in this, right? So this is kind of adding to that narrative. But going beyond that, so not only was the consignment set from at Crystal store, like not the full Mansell collection, but also it was physically located in different places at the same time. So one is the store had been broken into, unfortunately, like some other Lego stores with this craziness of thieves, retail theft and reselling. So Crystal temporarily put some of the most valuable sets in storage or at her home or somewhere off premises until she could buy a safe for the back room. Which I also find kind of weird, like maybe a gun safe, that's going to cost you thousands of dollars, and like Lego boxes are big, right? Like there's only so many you can fit in there. To me, that doesn't sound like worth the money, like I would have put them into a high security storage locker, But anyway, that was her choice. So she did have eventually safes on premises in the back room that where later she would keep like the really expensive ones like Ewok Village, Cloud City, whatever. So it's very unclear at what point, at any given time in the timeline, what sets were in the back safe, what sets were off property, what sets were in the front in retail. And the last day of Crystal's, run as a franchisee, she tried to take photos of the whole store, right, to account for, okay, this is evidence of everything how I left the condition, how I left the store before I go. But it was kind of a crazy, chaotic experience, with Brandon there and stuff. And she definitely did not take pictures of everything, which is totally understandable. Hopefully this is an indication that she's trying to hide something or whatnot. But yeah, so the accounting was incomplete. So again, I don't know how much this costs, but I would think, again, I've not had any retail experience, but you want one, like she put yellow stickers on the boxes that to denote the ones that are part of Brian's collection. I don't know. You don't want to damage the mint boxes. If you try to peel them off and you get the little white residue afterwards on those circular, colored stickers like at school, that's horrible, right? So what I would have done, of course, was like either saran wrap, shrink wrap, some sort of plastic around them, then put the sticker on top of that. Each box having a unique ID number, or even like RFID tags. Like I don't know if those how cheap those are, and so now you have each box is marked with a unique ID number, and then you can you clearly know whether it is part of Mansell's collection or not. And I know bad actors could like open up the bags or replace the sets, mess up with the stickers or whatnot. But that is better than what they ended up doing, in 2024. So anyway, so I mentioned the safe, I mentioned the layaway, whatnot. Crystal should have disclosed all of this, to Reckless Ben, or maybe she did, like a couple weeks ago, and they should have put it on their channel. I understand they probably have reasons to want to not disclose that unless they're forced to, and like keep the story simpler, and maybe it makes them look more sympathetic. But now, with this info coming out now, it just makes them look shadier. So. Again, I still think Bam is the way more guilty party, but this doesn't make Crystal and Ben look good. So after that is, Ammon and his brother interviews with Coffee. They talk about how like, you can't trust Crystal. She has a history of shoplifting that we didn't know about. Otherwise, we wouldn't have given her a franchise. So that's lie, right? So Crystal says that she did disclose when she was 19. So that's over 20 years ago. She was I guess convicted for shoplifting. She disclosed that to BAM in her franchisee application, and they did not see that as a reason to deny her. So now they're just trying to use it for character assassination, which is like the clear MO of a. When the side is guilty, they do these things to try to advantage their side. So that's really low. But I mean, what do you expect from somebody who accused some 20-year-olds of having heroin in the car? I mean, that if that's true that they faked like, oh yeah, Ben and his friends have heroin, cops, you better pull them over. That could have resulted in a shooting or something. That is, well, one, yeah, we know you don't SWAT, you don't falsely accuse people. That's a crime too, right? But especially for like major drug offenses and other things that could lead the police to be understandably hostile and more eager to use force. Like that is just inexcusable. So anyway, going to the U-Haul thing again, it's just so silly because their MO seems to be, hey, I'm going to try the biggest lie I can that will benefit my side, and if I'm not, and then hopefully I'm not called on it. If I am called on it, I have an excuse ready. So that's what the U-Haul was like. First is like, no, there's no U-Haul. They're wrong. Brandon showed up to Crystal's store in a rental car, and then when Coffee shows him the receipts, it'd be, oh well, you see what it was is he was using the rental car for a side thing like that has nothing to do with Crystal's store, and it was just that was the vehicle he happened to have at the time, and give me a break, right? Like it's the opposite of, like I was talking about with Crystal and the layaway stuff and everything. So come out, be proactive, be transparent, put your cards on the table, and that's how you get public trust. This whole like changing your story every time you're challenged, or like trying to come up with cockamamie excuses or mental gymnastics to explain what seems to be really sus, that doesn't do you any favors, right? It reminds me of just like the 5-year-old kid is like, why is the candy jar empty, little Johnny? Well, you see, Mom, what happened was, like, give me a break, man. It's inexcusable for adult, and especially so for a CEO. And again, yeah, all the body language and verbal cues and stuff that the Prime Minister lady mentioned, Sadie mentioned, Ammon and his brother are doing it again in the interviews with CoffeeZilla. So it's nuts. So yeah, I don't want to spoil or the whole CoffeeZilla video. I mean, it is an hour. I recommend you watch it. Maybe you can even turn it up to like 1.25 speed to save you time, or use like the YouTube like AI summaries. But anyway, he does an accounting of like here's the amount of that we think, the amount of the Mansell collection that was sold prior to Crystal losing the store. Here's the amount that M&R Productions was bought on the side. Here's the amount that Crystal still owed Brian from those sales. Here's the amount of layaway sets that maybe were partially paid. Here's the amount of unsold sets that should have been in the store, based on Crystal's photos. And here's the spreadsheet of the full Mansell accounting. And here's the number that Bricks and Minifigs are saying of the Mansell sets that they can find now after Josh and Brandon or corporate took over the store. So all those numbers, they don't add up, they don't work, right? And Coffee comes up. I think he came up with a number of something like in the tens of thousands of there's this discrepancy, right? Of like that Lego, tens and thousands of dollars of Lego sets that were in Crystal's photos when she relinquished control of the store and now are not Brian has not been paid for, and Bricks and Minifigs doesn't seem to be able to account for those sets. So I don't care if they can account for them or not. They owe Brian the amount of those sets, right? They were in the photos with Crystal. They're poof, disappeared while the store was under BAM corporate ownership. So they're responsible. So regardless of all the other stuff, the layaway, the Crystal needs to true up her numbers. Yeah, that's true. Maybe all that can happen with the Mansells separately, but BAM at least owes tens of thousands of dollars worth to the Mansells for this inventory that seemed to disappear after Crystal's November photos. That was CoffeeZilla's conclusion, and I trust him. And BAM, BAM hasn't provided any better evidence to the contrary. So I think, there you have it. It's kind of an open shut. So in the end, like I said, this video had to be a home run for BAM in order for it to do any good in the public for their case. It wasn't a home run, obviously. Maybe it even made their position look worse. So I'm just glad they were dumb enough to do interviews with Coffee and Ammon and his brother, and I'm glad that they performed so poorly in those interviews that it didn't help their case. So yeah, I'll wrap it up here. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope I hope everyone learns a lot from this, and I hope the Mansells, they're obviously, the GoFundMe now is worth way more than the Lego ever were. So yeah, I hope all that isn't tied up in court too much. We'll see how the litigation and the various cases in Utah go. But and I hope to be talking about bricks soon rather than these jerks. So anyway, thanks for watching. May the force be with you, and I'll talk to you next time.